Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are. Last time on this channel, I spoke about SADC, that there were rumors that SADC were going to send some of officials to Zimbabwe as a follow-up to the damning report by SADC damning the Zimbabwe election. And well, at the time I did say it didn't sound very hopeful, but some people argued that SADC is very slow and sluggish, but that was going to happen. Well, this is an interview of one of the SADC ambassadors following his visit to State House today.
For receiving us today, despite the president's very, very busy schedule. And we came today as we are 9 countries, SADC countries accredited in Zimbabwe, and we are all here to congratulate the president for the very, very peaceful election, fair, free, and transparent. And we say the president, we came here to reiterate our support to the people of Zimbabwe, to the government of Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe is not alone. We are all one family as a SADC, and Zimbabwe is a member of one of the founders of SADC, part of the front line SADC countries. So we just came to reiterate our support to the president, to the people of Zimbabwe.
Well, that was the ambassador, the Angolan ambassador to Zimbabwe, and he's the chairperson of the SADC ambassadors in Zimbabwe. That's basically saying there that all 9 of the accredited SADC ambassadors have been to Zimbabwe to congratulate Mnangagwa over the peaceful elections, free, fair, and transparent, etc., etc. I think this puts the final nail on this hope that SADC were somehow going to act and rescue Zimbabwe. That is not going to happen. And we can now say we can forget it. It is, of course, disappointing. But the truth of the matter is that Zimbabwe should have known, or at least now should know, that if we want free, fair, and credible elections in Zimbabwe, we, Zimbabweans, have to work for it. And that work means starting today. One of the most disappointing things about Zimbabwe's failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections is that this is the very reason why Zimbabwe is a failed state. And in this particular case, even SADC, election observers, could not deny that the elections for the 23rd of August were not free, fair, and credible. And yet SADC itself had decided to sweep that damning report under the carpet and do nothing about it. The question now is, what next? Well, I think we can only say that now that SADC has granted Zanu PF political legitimacy, we are looking at another 5 years of this corrupt, tyrannical Zanu PF dictatorship. And worse still, at the end of it, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. I do not see any meaningful democratic reforms being implemented by this Zanu PF regime. And therefore, then, there is absolutely no hope that the 2028 elections will be any different. And knowing the opposition, as we now all should do, we can be certain that they will be participating in those elections, making the same idiotic promises that they've got winning in rigged election strategies. Last time it was, we will register our supporters, 6 million of them. And yet, a year before the 2023 election, SEC revealed that only 250,000 Zimbabweans had registered to vote in the first 4 years. Clearly showing that CCC were making an outrageous claim which they were not able to keep. The tragedy is the opposition was participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that they're flawed, and knowing fully well that by participating, they're giving legitimacy to the regime. One of the arguments that some of us have made in these 2023 elections is exactly that. You cannot keep on participating in a flawed process that is so flawed that you yourself admit the only rational thing to do is to stop participating. And in this particular case, they were participating knowing fully well that the process is flawed and that by participating, they're giving Zanu PF legitimacy. But most important of all, they also knew that by participating, they'll get the few gravy train seats that Zanu PF was giving to entice the opposition to participate. I think Zimbabweans have got to wake up to this reality. The argument that was given was that CCC had many other strategies of making sure Zanu PF does not rig elections. One of them was that they plugged all the vote rigging holes, which again was just nonsense. Because when you do not even have a verified voters roll, how can you say that you've plugged vote rigging holes? And it turned out that even on the day of voting, CCC failed to field enough election agents at all the polling stations, leaving the door wide open for Zanu PF to tamper with the results as it so wished. We cannot pretend anymore that CCC and before it MDC will implement any meaningful democratic reforms. The truth of the matter is they're not. And worse still, that they are participating in these flawed elections for the sake of getting the few gravy train seats that they know Zanu PF has got to give away to entice the opposition to participate, because it needs to give the impression out there that Zimbabwe is a multi-party democracy. And so Triple C MDC have been playing along. I think their plan is to remain the main opposition party in the country so that hopefully if the nation, the people of Zimbabwe finally get sick and tired of the regime and they collapse the economy, they will either go out in the street to protest and or have another coup. And Triple C will be waiting in the wings to claim the throne. I think what we need as a nation is to implement the democratic reforms to make sure elections are free, fair, and credible. That should be the basis of our fight. We should be fighting for the restoration of all Zimbabweans' democratic rights and freedoms, including the right to free, fair, and credible elections. All Zimbabweans. And the only way that can happen is if we implement the reforms. And we should also confront the opposition, because as long as Zanu PF knows the opposition will participate no matter what, there will be no meaningful reforms implemented. So we have got to fight Zanu PF to demand these reforms and to demand that no one should be above the law. No one should say they are not democratically accountable to the people. In other ways, this case of rigged election is totally unacceptable. Zanu PF does not have the right to rig elections. That is the message that we should send clear and loud. And we should be able to stand up and demand that. And like I said, we should also be prepared to stand up to the opposition and tell them in no uncertain terms that the culture of selling the people for the few gravitran seats is unacceptable and must end. It's not going to be an easy fight. But the very idea that we can go into 2028 and see a repeat of the 2023 election should be outrageous to all thinking Zimbabweans out there. At the heart of these failed elections, and Zimbabwe has had rigged elections since independence in 1980. And it is the failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections that is at the heart of Zimbabwe's economic and political failures. At the heart of it all is the message that we Zimbabweans have failed to govern ourselves. And failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections is at the very heart of that failure. If we thought SADC was going to step in, and it could have stepped in and refused to grant Zanu PF political legitimacy, well, we can forget that now. SADC has clearly made up his mind that they are not going to do it. We are on our own. The fight to end Zimbabwe case of rigged elections and bad governance must start today, 23rd November, 2023. If we fail to deliver it, we only have got ourselves to blame. It's going to be a long fight. It's going to be a very tough road. But fight it we must. If we want free, fair, and credible elections and good governance, we, the people of Zimbabwe, have to fight for it. That is my message to you tonight. And like I said, of course, I'm disappointed that SADC has seen it fit to sweep the damning report of their own SADC election observer team under the carpet and granted Zanu PF political legitimacy. But to be quite honest, I saw it coming. At the present moment, there was really very little options for SADC. And that could well explain why they've decided to do nothing about it. We, the people of Zimbabwe, have not earned the right to have a competent, democratic Zimbabwe. That is the bottom line. And it is one that we must now confront and deal with it. It is going to be a tough fight, but the fight must start. And we must not be found wanting in that fight. Thank you very much for listening, and good night.